Hey everybody, my name is Joshua Palmatier and I am the founder of a small press called Zombies Need Brains, and we specialize in themed science fiction and fantasy anthologies. All of them are funded by Kickstarters, and we're running our Kickstarter for 3 new anthologies right now. We managed to fund yesterday, actually. So if you would like to pre-order any of the anthologies that we're funding this year, head on over to tinyurl.com/ZNB2021, and you can fund any of the 3. We're here today to talk with Aprilynne Pike about her story for the Noir anthology. So the Noir anthology is basically what it sounds like. It's going to be science fiction and fantasy stories, so set or written with a noir atmosphere to it. Probably going to be all mysteries and whatnot. So fantasy and science fiction setting for the noir one. Okay, the other 2 anthologies that we're trying to fund are Shattering the Glass Slipper, which is a fairy tale anthology, except that we want you to kind of upend and twist and gender bend and all that kind of stuff of the fairy tales. So, and that one we are actually looking for fantasy and science fiction settings. So we do want some science fiction upended fairy tales for that one. Okay, and the last anthology we're trying to fund is called Brave New Worlds. That one is stories about us reaching for the stars. So any story set along us leaving Earth and heading out into space, any kind of story along the path to a new planet. So like a generation ship story or a colony ship story, something like that. Okay, or a story about when we reach the planet. Like, do we have to terraform the planet? What if we get to the planet and there's an intelligent species there? You know, that kind of thing. So any story along that path is what we're looking for Brave New World. So obviously more science fiction stories there. Okay, let's hand it over to Aprilynne though, and have her introduce herself and let us know what your web pages are and Twitter handles and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, we'll move on, okay?
Hey, I'm Aprilynne Pike. I am the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the Wings series, as well as, do math, 14 minus 4, 10 other books, all for YA at this point, although hopefully branching out a bit in the future. And you can find me on Twitter at Aprilynne Pike, or my website, www.AprilynnePike.com. And I have a Facebook, and you just search for Aprilynne Pike. It's probably like Facebook/Aprilynne Pike, but I'm kind of all over. But mostly you'll find me on Twitter and my website.
Yes, everybody go, friend her, like her, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so yes, Aprilynne Pike is one of our anchor authors for the Noir anthology. If you're not sure what an anchor author is, we fill half of our anthologies with anchor authors, people that have been published, and will help us promote the Kickstarter. And then the other half of the anthology, we fill with an open call. And since we're funded, the open call has already started. So if you're a writer, then definitely swing on by the Kickstarter page and find the submission guideline link there. And then if you have a story, then you can send it in. Maybe you'll be in an anthology with Aprilynne Pike. You never know. Okay, so Aprilynne, you're ready for Noir. So do you have any idea what you're going to write for the Noir anthology yet? I mean, you have until December, so.
Good. I have to confess, I agreed to do this without actually having an idea at all, because my friend John asked if I would do it, and I was like, oh, John, I love you, yes, what's Noir? Okay, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was close. But I've been thinking about it since I agreed. And I actually ran a Twitter poll about a week ago as part of the Kickstarter push, asking people which of my characters they'd like to see. And I admit I wasn't at all surprised that it went for Tammany, who is the main love interest in my Wings series, which is my most popular series. And he is far and away my most popular character of all of my books. So I wasn't really surprised. But I kind of expected it too. He is essentially a fairy bodyguard for the entire Wings series. And then after the Wings series, I ended up revisiting the series and writing a companion book. There we go. It's called Arabesque. And in it, he's older, he's an adult, and he doesn't have as much bodyguarding to do. And he becomes a vigilante in San Francisco. And so that particular role, I think, fits really well into noir. So I'm going to be writing a short story about one of his escapades on the streets of San Francisco very late at night.
Dark alleys and all that kind of stuff if you're in San Francisco.
Yeah, plenty of dark alleys.
It sounds like the character is like perfect as, you know, a noir detective kind of.
Yeah, slightly different, you know, career path, but very similar methodology.
And have you written a lot of short stories, or have you mostly done novels?
I mostly do novels. In fact, I'm generally pretty intimidated by short stories. Most authors I know really love to write short stories, and they do it as like a palate cleanser between novels. And I actually think it's so much easier to write long. In fact, I'm good at writing long and then cutting back, or, you know, writing mostly long and then adding on forever. But I find it hard to fit an entire story within 5,000 or 6,000 words. So I haven't done it very often, but it's nearly always for an anthology for someone I like. And then I fret and and then I come up with an idea and I write it and it turns out okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I've passed the fretting point and now I'm starting to get ideas. Especially now that I've settled on a main character, that's always helpful. So I'm starting to get excited to write it, but I do fret a bit.
Oh yeah, and I would agree that I think I also write mostly novels, and then I'm kind of dabbling in short stories. And I do think it's harder to write a short story because the short story, you have to be so focused. I mean, you can't introduce anything that doesn't actually apply to the story. And so, yeah, it's really, really difficult, especially if you're used to writing novels, because novels, you have that kind of leisure to introduce some random things and say, oh, that's really cool, I'm going to throw that in there. You can't.
Well, with an established character, it's nice because you know the character. But on the other hand, you don't want to assume that all of your readers know the character. So one of the things that I've been kind of percolating in my head is how to introduce Tammany to new readers without, you know, being like, old readers, you don't have to read this page, you know?
Yeah, I've run into that with some anchor authors that are writing in established universes where they put in too much. They're like, people don't know this person, so I'm going to throw in everything. And it's like, no. You what they need to know for that particular story about that character and about that character's past. So yeah, definitely harder to write short stories in general. Speaking of new things for people, you have started a new, hopefully, series, right? But at this point, There's only one book out called Heat. So why don't you introduce us to Heat and what might be happening in the future?
So Heat is, there we go. I actually wrote about a page and a half of it a good 8 or 9 years ago, because it's just part of what you do when you're pitching new series to publishers. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it, and I had like the most jello-ish idea of mythology, but I revisited it about 1.5 years ago, and I'm a big believer that your brain is like a crock pot. The longer stuff stays in there, the more you find out it's becoming soup. So all of a sudden, like, things started snapping into place. And I know that my brain had been working on them unconsciously for years. And so I have this paranormal romance. I was kind of really going for the feel of Wings again, but a completely different mythos. Obviously, it's not fairies, it's dragons, where you have a mythology that is familiar. I mean, everybody knows dragons, at least something about dragons, and then put my own twist on it. And in Wings, I took fairies that are really, really closely associated with plants and really wound up and twisted that mythos. And in Heat, we have dragons that are very, very closely associated with fire. And I've really twisted that mythos to make that really the central part of these dragons mythology. And I've set it in Montana. So we were joking before about it being urban fantasy. I'm not sure there's really an urban in Montana, but as urban as Montana gets, is set in Kalispell. And
called it suburban fantasy.
Suburban fantasy, yeah. But we've got a girl who has been longtime friends with these two stepbrothers, and one of them is rather suddenly changing and starting to show signs that there's something either seriously wrong with him or just seriously different. And he's starting to get seriously attractive, which wouldn't be such a big deal if she hadn't been dating his stepbrother for 2 years. So, yeah, lots of changes.
Sounds cool, and that explains the red and all the imagery on the cover and stuff like that. The dragons are associated with fire and whatnot.
Yeah.
So is the book out already?
Yep, the book came out in May, and I'm working on the second one, and I expect it to be out sometime this fall, probably a bit late this fall.
Okay. So why don't you tell us again your websites and whatnot, and where we could get your books that are already out, and we'll close it out.
So my books are available always on Amazon, but most of them are available on like barnesandnoble.com and not via my website. That's something actually I need to work on, but like pretty much all of the bookstores, including things like Apple and Google and all the places where you can buy ebooks. And then my website is AprilynnePike.com, and my Twitter handle is @AprilynnePike. And as long as you can spell my name, you can probably find me, and it's AprilynNne. It's all one word, Aprilynne. And if you search for Aprilynne Pike, pretty much anywhere online, you'll find something.
Okay, sounds cool. Everybody needs to run out and buy those books. So back to Kickstarter. So I want to thank Aprilynne for being here today to help us not only with the Kickstarter, but with everything in general. It's always good to hear about new books and what other books are out there. So again, if you would like to get the Noir anthology or Shattering the Glass Slipper and Brave New Worlds, head on over to our Kickstarter. It's at tinyurl.com/ZNB2021. Okay, we're already funded, so we're not pushing for the funding, but we would like to reach as many of our stretch goals as we possibly can. So if we can get high enough, you'll get tons and tons of free ebooks as bonuses, as well as the anthologies. Okay, plus we also have a whole ton of reward levels with like checkerizations and signed books and some swag levels and stuff like that for a bunch of our authors, anchor authors and past anchor authors. So check out the Kickstarter. Again, it's at tinyurl.com/ZNB2021. Okay, and again, thank you, Aprilynne, for being here today to chat with us. And any last words you have for everybody?
If you find me on Twitter, you won't have to scroll down very far to find a link to the Kickstarter. So
yeah, if you search for Zombies Need Brains,
definitely find it on my Twitter.
Yeah. Same thing for Zombies Need Brains, and then my own Twitter at Ben Tate Office. So again, thank you for being here today, and hopefully we'll get as high as we possibly can on the Kickstarter. Catch you later, everybody.